am here tonight because I care about the community. I care about our district and our schools to be the best for our future. But I cannot support your budget or your budgetary process. And I'd like to offer tonight, so I would ask tonight that you consider 3 things in your budgetary process and reporting to the community. The first is to show an actual to budget process, and that includes actual financials to date, a financial roll forward that shows a forecast to date, and not budget as soon as the budget is done, as Mr. Copeland offered earlier, but to budget to actual. That's how most companies do it. That's how most nonprofits do it. I serve a nonprofit board. As finance chair, I'm asked to give a roll forward every year as to budget to actual. I'm also asking that you consider a report for a fund balance roll forward, which shows the changes in all the assigned and unassigned fund balances so we can understand. I know some of the slides tonight gave us some of the values that we have to search it, but a one-pager that shows the change in fund balance and cash and assets, as well as debt, would be helpful for all of us to understand your fiscal, what you're doing fiscally. And the third thing I would ask is for a capital expenditure budget that looks into the future. I am very concerned about the enrollment growth and how we're going to pay for some of the facilities expansion. Tonight we heard about Ballackinwood Middle School and how that's going to be funded. It's not yet been determined. We have to determine those things. We have to get ourselves prepared from a debt capacity standpoint as to how we're going to fund these things. And we have something like $660 million in debt on the balance sheet.
Brad Moser, Gladwin. I think a lot of the response in this room are people who are for what's been going on, misunderstand what a lot of us who are supporting Arthur Wolk in his lawsuit is. And it's not that we want less of a quality of education. It's that we want an education that is fair to all of the community, and the school board and the students aren't the only people who live here. I personally, we're going to lose our family home after 62 years because my mother can't afford to pay the taxes anymore. It's gone. And I'm the only one of my siblings that still live here. You know, I went to Lower Merion and I got a great education. We can drive to New York City in a Jaguar, a limousine, or a nice car that's well appointed, that's a lot less money, and still get to where we need to go. When the economy changed, I was a contractor for my career. I was forced to tighten my belt. Before that, I give people a price. If they like me, I get the job. It turned into a negotiation afterwards. What about the negotiation with all the things that you guys are spending money for? It's not that we want to lower it. What we want to do is make sure that we get the best bang for our buck. And when you deal with the different unions, those unions have a responsibility like the rest of us Americans who had to tighten our belts. They should have to tighten their belts too, so that we can get things in order. We have to respect our elders in this community, the Inuit population to the Great North. The elders are the most important people in the community. Here, we seem to say the children are the most important. They're extremely important. You guys showed all sorts of stuff about social importance and social issues that you wanted to make our children aware of. I can't understand how you can go to bed at night when we have the Taj Mahal of school districts here, and 4 miles down the road, they don't even put toilet paper into the bathrooms because the kids will flush the toilets and call it. It's ridiculous. That's what I didn't get up here and say that what you were saying was ridiculous because you had a point. So please don't interrupt me. So there's got to be a way to balance this out to still give a quality education that we have been known for since I went to school. And when I went to school, I think there was 10,000 students. We didn't spend anywhere near this kind of money. Thank you.
Jeff Asa, Narberth. I've come before you prior to the lawsuit. I've come to you during the lawsuit now. I'm not a party to some of the things that are described in the lawsuit. I believe very much in strong schools. I have 2 children in the schools. I've come to you in the past and I've talked to you about the law of diminishing returns, about how we need to bend the cost curve down. It's nice to see, I don't know if it's because of the lawsuit or just circumstances, but it's nice to see that the tax rate increase this year is a little bit lower, that it's been trending recently. But just like the ACA, we need to watch that cost curve, because what seems like just a few dollars a month, one year over the next, in a decade, it suddenly looks like the healthcare costs and the college costs that have spiraled out of control for a lot of families. I know I've made that point before, but there's a large crowd here, so I thought I'd make it again. To my main point, first, I'd like to recognize the tremendous leadership team at Ballykinwood Middle School. I've had the opportunity to not only experience positive interactions with them personally, but I have heard amazing things about the support that team has provided to the student and family of a BC student who was a neighbor of mine, fighting for his life against a terribly rare cancer. They have exhibited tremendous leadership and empathy and support for that family, and I thank them for that, and I wanted you to recognize that as well. Next, I'd like to briefly comment on a statement presented by the board president at the beginning of the session tonight, that just because the state authorities and auditors affirm the budget practices and board actions as legal, that's very little comfort to those of us who are familiar with the failures of regulatory agencies prior to the Great Recession and the failures of auditors of poor corporate actors like Enron. After the courts thus far have ruled against the district, these calls to authority ring hollow. At this point, you need to earn our trust back. Finally, a question, or several, and some of them were answered by Dr. Copeland. At this point, we all know the district has set aside $50 to $60 million in reserves. What was the total reserve being pursued? 10% of the overall budget? 20%? What's the goal of these reserves? Emergency cash to pay for capital projects with cash? It appears from Dr. Copeland's presentation that was for meeting pension reserve requirements that would hit us in 2020 and beyond. It would be nice if those things had been presented from the very beginning, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, when questions began to be asked prior to the lawsuit. Just be transparent about it. Here's our goal and here's why. I don't think those things were very well presented. And there we are, where we are as a result. Instead of litigating a rather sneaky budget process that has clearly been shown because of the lawsuit, showing deficits, booking surpluses, maybe the litigation ought to be towards the state to cap pension obligations or to obtain a stronger negotiating stance with organized labor.
Good evening. I'm Stephen Gleason from Rosemont, Pennsylvania. And it's just as it was tough to follow the kids for Dr. Copeland, that was very tough speech to follow, and I agree with most, if not all, of your points. The people who are here to speak out against the lawsuit and continued litigation and out against the budget aren't trying to cut programs. They're not trying to cut special education. They're not trying to make the Lower Merion schools inferior. What we're trying to do is to increase transparency and to stop the practices that have resulted in this district accumulating $60 million of taxpayer funds for unspecified purposes. As Amara Briggs pointed out earlier, you do not roll forward surpluses even though they occur after you've projected huge deficits. That's illegal. It's certainly against good budgeting practice of any corporation, of any school. I've served on the board of 3 independent schools, and if we ever did that, set a tuition or we have to raise our money through tuition every year, unlike you guys who can just raise it through taxes. But if we ever did that, we wouldn't be trustees. We wouldn't be serving the fiduciary responsibilities of our constituents, and I don't think you're doing that at all. I also disagree strongly with the statements from earlier speakers that only people, and the chairman of the Democratic Party who said in a Suburban editorial that only people who have children in the district should have a say in this process. So I'm here to represent the taxpayers, as is Mr. Wolk and other folks. So what we're really talking about, we're not talking about the programs. or the enrollment growth, or even the salaries. We can agree to disagree about what's reasonable and what expenditure levels are appropriate. But what we are talking about, and I really encourage everyone who's spoken tonight, if you have kids in the district or not, just read Judge Smythe's order and read the recent Commonwealth Court order. I mean, that's what we're really talking about. There's nothing in that complaint. There are things in the complaint, but there are nothing in those two orders that talk about anything other than budgeting and fiscal matters. So to get up here and speak and make us look like villains for cutting education is just not factually correct. What this board has done is repeatedly and systematically rigged its budget over 10 years by projecting deficits when in fact surpluses have occurred. And then they have illegally, in violation of Section 609, which requires a 2/3 vote of the board directors specifically, they've delegated that responsibility to the business manager and to the auditors. The auditors work for you, not vice versa. I'll remind you of that. So just to say that the auditors have to tell you how to move your illegally raised funds is just false, and it's really disgusting as a taxpayer that you continue to let that happen. And finally, you are double dipping on the PSERS and on the special education because you're exceeding the Act 1 balance each year and you're putting money in deficit, so you're counting money twice, and that is also illegal. Thanks very much.
What upsets me most about this is that this pits neighbor against neighbor. This pits one opinion against another, and people are looked at as enemies. I'm hoping that doesn't happen again, but I think you have to be very, very clear in the information you give to folks. You sent a letter out last week to parents, and what you mentioned that the appellate court did not rule on budgeting or anything like that. Well, the appellate court said nothing about that, absolutely nothing. And that was sort of not, I guess it was misleading. I'm going to put it that way. What the appellate court ruled on was that the attorneys for the school district and 2 law firms failed to give in their brief on time. So the appellate court ruled, nothing's happening here. So we spent all that money, 2 law firms, for nothing. And what I am saying to you is, resolve this. You can resolve this. You can take care of this. And if you choose to go forward with it, instead of using money in a different way and changing your procedures, I think you're doing a disservice to the community. And I also think you have to send a message to this community that this is a discussion. It's a debate. My grandson joined a debate club in his last year at Lower Merion High School. I went to a few of those debates. They weren't like this. We're all reasonable folks. We care about this community. We care about public education.
Good evening. James Dorn from Gladwin. I'll give you some advice, and it's time to start listening to someone other than those who have put us all in this incredible mess. In order to avoid certain further litigation, adopt a budget with no tax increase, refund last year's tax receipts in excess of the index, and negotiate a comprehensive settlement with the taxpayers. Or, do you intend to continue to drag the school district, township, and its residents through the mud? Do you intend to continue false budgeting to raise taxes illegally? It's clear now, and you have been told by both the trial court and the Commonwealth Court, that your fake budgeting since 2009 is a violation of both the Public School Code and Act 1. When you thumb your nose at the law, how are your students being served by your example? If you continue down the wrong path, sooner or later your luck will run out. You will go beyond any protection you may have as an elected official. If you haven't already, you will go beyond any insurance coverage you may have, unless, of course, your insurance carriers provide coverage for deliberate illegal practices. I pay my school taxes every year because it's the law. We should all obey the law. Am I right?
So my name is Dr. Bruce Bowman. I'm a physician, academician, professor at the college level, and I highly value quality education. I think what the issue is whether the community believes the budget issues are appropriate or not. And I see that there's an issue that's become public that's polarizing the community, seriously polarizing the community. And the thing that I'm most concerned about is that we all love the quality of education that we get in this district. But the problem is, love has no meaning unless there's trust. This, I don't know what it is. I'm not privy to it. I'm not privy to the facts and figures, but you're losing the trust of the community. And I would urge you to do whatever it takes to restore that trust. Because without the trust, the quality is going to severely get dampened. So you really somehow need to build that trust. It is a big issue. And I don't care who stands here or talks on either side. It's got to come down to the trust, really. So I'll stop there. Thanks.
Hi, my name is Siobhan Pendergast. I'm from Gladwin, and I do not support your budget. I don't support this budgeting process. I don't support your budget. I don't support your budgeting process. I do think it's shameful, actually, that you're pitting neighbor against neighbor. This is not about school education. This is about responsible budgeting. This is about accountability. This is about transparency. You have 55 to 60 million in surplus. You were told you couldn't raise the taxes. You went twice and lost. And when you went twice and lost. And even when you lost the second round, he said if you want to raise your taxes, you could only raise it 2.4%. Tonight you presented that you're going to raise it 2.74%. At what point are you going to be held accountable? You are the single most largest runaway train in my tax bill. And this lawsuit is about holding you accountable. This lawsuit is about stopping the unending bleeding of you just taking money from all of the taxpayers. It's almost appears incredibly arrogant what you're doing. That you've gone twice and you've lost. And you've said tonight you have no budget for your legal fees, or you won't disclose your budget for your legal fees. That you have insurance, but your insurance only paid a cap of $195, yet you hire lawyers for $95. I may have that number wrong, but it's clearly over what you're allowed to have by your insurance. And every question we ask about budgeting and accountability, we can't get a straight answer. And then tonight during your presentation, you talk about $14 million in unassigned funds and $6 million like emergency funds. 7 years ago, I came here, asked you what a $3 million miscellaneous line item was for. And you told me it's miscellaneous, doesn't matter. We have a huge budget, it's miscellaneous. I told you at that time, if I went to my president and said, I have a $3 million budget and I can't tell you what's in it or what I'm going to spend on it, I'd be fired that day. This is about accountability. And if we want to get into stats about the past, the present, and the future, if you Google U.S. News and World Report, as I did the last time I came before you, they said we were 480th in the nation, and we were number 5 in Pennsylvania. Well, it's great that we can say we're number 5 in Pennsylvania, but the best school in Pennsylvania is 51 in the nation. That's Mastermind. The next school in Pennsylvania doesn't show up until 303 or 353. So if we want to be the best in the 300s and beyond, great. We have a 56.9% graduation college readiness. We are great in math, 90%, 88 in English, but you have 11-to-1 teacher ratio, and Conestoga is number 3 in the state, and they have 17-to-1 and twice the amount of kids. So we're not doing something right here, and I'm asking you to be accountable.
Thank you. My name is Steve Tonkovich. I'm a resident in Gladwin. First, you folks don't have an easy job. I don't envy you that position. I think you folks are doing a decent job on the education side from what I can see from what has been presented tonight. However, I also came out of a public school system. However, I do take issue with the lack of transparency with the budget process. You folks have had discrepancies in your bond prospectus versus your public budgets. I don't understand how that can occur. You seem to be putting aside the issue that you have 2 lawsuits against you or 2 court cases which have said you're not doing things right. You've got a 60 million reserve, which is under question. It may not be illegal. We don't know yet, but we need to determine that, and we need to fix that. I think you folks as educators need to take your role model position very seriously. If children are looking at you and seeing you under this much scrutiny for what you're trying to do, they're going to question how they should behave themselves. I also want to take issue with statements about the home values. All home values in Lower Merion are not rising. My homes along my street are not selling. They're not turning over quickly. They're falling in price. That has a significant impact on the future. It also has an impact on the future of your tax base. If you keep raising taxes, you will start to decrease home values. Home values are based on neighborhoods, schools, taxes, and other factors. If the taxes get too high, the home values will start to fall, and you will lose the tax base that gives you the ability to create the school system you're trying to create. Thank you.
I've heard a couple of times, actually 3 or 4 times, the number 60 million thrown around. It's 55, and well, never mind. I tried to explain, but there's no $60 million.